Folks, welcome back to my channel. Thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to talk about Dog. I saw this February 25th. It's the new film starring Channing Tatum and a dog. Shocker. And to my surprise, it was actually also co-directed by Channing Tatum, which is interesting. And I think that's very cool. I've noticed more and more actors are getting to branch off into directing, at least the ones that want to. And I think that's great. I think they deserve to do that. They should be able to branch out, try new things, and a lot of them do a very good job. This one is more middle of the road, but it's his first one. It's better than I expected, I'll say that, but there were a lot of parts that were confusing and uncomfortable, weird, and just kind of poorly written, so I'm not entirely sure how to feel about this movie. It centers around Channing Tatum, who's a former Army Ranger who suffered some head trauma, which makes it so he can't go back into combat, even though he really wants to. But in order to do so, he needs a letter from one of his former captains, and to get said letter, he needs to take one of his, former friend's dogs to his funeral, his friend's funeral, because his friend passed away and his dog doesn't like flying, so Channing Tatum has to drive it cross country. So it's interesting. It's interesting that the Army can say, no, we don't want you because of your head trauma. We don't care what paperwork you show us. You're just unfit to be back in combat. But then one of his former captains can say, no, it's okay. He drove a car for a while with a dog that doesn't really like people. So put him back in. Also, now that I kind of explained it, I'm going to get very into spoiler territory because some of my problems have to deal with specific plot points. And, I feel like this is a movie that if you wanted to see it, you'll go see it. And if not, it's fine. It really is just a fine movie, in my opinion. So on Channing Tatum's character, I think he's okay. I think he could have been fleshed out a little more considering he's on screen for, I think, 100% of the movie. I don't think that there's a shot that Channing isn't in. And I will say that's very impressive. I know that's kind of hard to do, especially when you're also trying to be behind the camera at some points as co-director. So I give Channing a lot of props. I think it is a good performance from him. It's definitely not his worst. I don't think it's his best, but I, again, think part of that is due to how his character was written. He's very unlikable, and the reason that I think we're supposed to care for him is his head trauma, the fact that he really just wants to get back, into combat, but he can't. He has to power through it. He has to show that he's healed. For a lot of this movie, it seems like he's fine. I want to say there's maybe 2 or 3 scenes max where we see the effects of his head trauma, and it's kind of a little thing. And then towards the end of the film, in the third act, there's a big thing that happens, but then it's fine. So it happens for like 15 minutes, and then he's fine. So it's interesting. I don't really know what that means. I don't really care about it because we didn't spend a lot of time with it. A lot of this movie, it seems like he's not struggling or dealing with any sort of PTSD or concussion or head trauma, whatever it was that he supposedly has and couldn't get back into combat for. He didn't struggle with it too much. So that wasn't really an issue. And there's another subplot with how he is as a father, or who he is as a father, that I feel like we spent no time with. I feel like it was kind of just thrown on towards the end. It felt weird. It felt like extra stuff we didn't need. He's got a lot of problems, and he is a shitty dude. So he's got a lot to overcome in order to win the audience over. And showing that he also has a daughter that he doesn't get to see with a woman that seems to hate him. Again, that's really not super clear. I don't think that helps his case. That just makes us feel like, oh yeah, he sucks. So that makes sense. I don't want him to see his kid. Like that meant nothing in the first scene where we see it. And then in the end, I'm pretty sure it all gets resolved, and he just walks in and he gets to hang out with her again. But I don't really know why. I don't know what transpired to where, he's a better person now or a better dad, because that's not dealt with at all. And like I said earlier, there were some weird parts, some problematic parts. My friend Sydney said in her Letterboxd review, there's a lot to explore there, but it's done clumsily at best and offensively at worst. Some really weird moments come about that I'm still very unsure of how to interpret. Reed Carolyn should not try to make social commentary anymore. LOL. And I totally agree. There were some bits where I kind of understood what they were going for, maybe, but then it seemed to get pushed a little too far. There's a scene where the dog attacks somebody, and I think the start of that is dealt with okay, but then it all just kind of wraps up in a weird way. It feels very fake. It feels very, let's move the plot along, let's forget that that happened. It doesn't feel like a genuine moment. Like, I don't think Reed Carolyn thought that one all the way through. And then there's also a scene with Bill Burr who plays a cop that is racist, I think. I mean, that's not a surprise, cops being racist. But there's, his character is confusing because the tone of it was weird. The conversation that he has with Channing Tatum, it seems like it's leading somewhere, and then it tips into somewhere else, and then it tips back. And then by the end, you're just lost. I don't know if he was trying to make a point by saying racist things and putting it in Channing Tatum's face, or if he was actually being racist. It was very unclear, and it made me uncomfy to listen to it. And again, those aren't the only two scenes where stuff like that happens, where it feels like maybe it's doing something and then you're like, oh no, maybe? I don't know. It was shot fairly well. I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting much in terms of cinematography, but there are actually a few shots that I really dug and some that really stuck with me. A couple that played with like reflections in a certain way, and there was one shot that just kind of lingered, and I thought it was really great. I think there's definitely aspects of this film that work really well in terms of emotion, in terms of forwarding this story, this narrative. His character arc, maybe, I don't know if he really has one. He's kind of just a really bad dude until the last 15 minutes, and then he likes the dog. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm kind of rambling, but I think part of that is because this is just an odd movie. And one thing for me that I kind of struggle with when I watch movies with animals in them, especially ones where an animal is like a main actor, it's just kind of hard for me to watch that in certain cases. There are plenty of movies that have dogs and cats and whatnot that I'm like, awesome, great. Like, it makes sense. It feels fine. It feels like the dogs are just chilling. And obviously they have no idea what's going on. They're not actors. What I'm saying is, it feels weird for me when I'm watching a dog who's supposed to have anxiety, when I'm watching a dog who maybe has PTSD of some kind, and it's always panting, it's always whining, it's always barking and yanking at the collar and freaking out. Like, I don't like that, because I start to think, like, what are they doing to the dog to make it act this way? Because a dog isn't like Channing Tatum where it goes, oh, I'm supposed to be scared. Cool, got it. Let me try that one more time. No, they have to scare the dog. It's just kind of uncomfortable to me when I watch a dog, have to act this way. So this is something that is more of a personal thing, and it's something that I'd actually like to do more research on. I remember there was that one movie, was it A Dog's Purpose, I think, that a lot of stuff came out about them like very badly mistreating that dog and putting it through way too much. With this film, it doesn't seem like it's maybe to that, that scale, but I don't know. There were parts where I just felt uncomfy looking at the dog being sad or scared or whatever. And so, yeah, that's just something for me. And if you're someone who loves dogs and loves animals, this might seem like a good movie for you. And maybe it is. Maybe you can kind of look past that. But yeah, some of that just made me uncomfy. Just because I'm not sure, I hope that made sense. Overall, I think it's a fine movie. It's like I said, nothing too great, nothing too bad. Some maybe offensive parts, or maybe just parts that were poorly executed. There were some pretty decent jokes, I will say. There were some quips here and there that I weren't expecting to get a laugh at, and I laughed pretty hard. But again, those are more few and far between. I think some of the better elements of this film are towards the climax, when it gets to be more of the touching, endearing, sort of dramatic side of the story, rather than trying to be the comedic side. It felt a bit messy, a bit clumsy, but again, it was shot very well. Channing Tatum does a good job. I think this was. It seems to be a performance that he was passionate about, that he cared about, and wanted to portray in the right way. And I think he did a fairly good job. So again, I also give him a lot of credit for being on screen for all of it and also co-directing it. That's huge, and that's pretty incredible of Channing. So yeah, overall, I enjoyed it. I'm not upset that I went to go see it. It's one of those movies where, like, if you want to go for it, if not, I wouldn't mind spending $3 to rent it. 2.5 stars out of 5. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know what you thought of Dog, if you saw it, if you enjoyed it, if you hated it. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.